Looks like it's going to come off. This time last year, they were busy canceling joint practices with the Saints.
Because of all the injuries.
They're so banged up, yeah. And they've got a handful of guys that are dealing with bumps and bruises. I guess the most concerning one is Christian Harris, because it seems like everybody else that's on the list of guys every day that are not practicing or at least working out on the field next to the practice.
Yeah.
Whereas Christian Harris has rarely been out there at all.
He's rarely been out there. I guess Will Anderson is the other concern, just because now it's another ankle injury, and you wonder, okay, I really hope this doesn't become some kind of chronic deal.
Correct.
If he has just naturally floppy ankles.
Yeah. Shin angle and all that good stuff. Yeah. So game is at noon on Saturday against the Rams. A lot of guys vying for or trying to survive here in the NFL.
Right, and the Rams don't traditionally play their starters much in the preseason. The third preseason game especially, I'm curious what they'll do.
I can't imagine the Texans are going to play theirs.
I wish they would start. I wish the offensive line would.
Yeah.
They need to have some success. You know, D'Amico had to venture into coach speak the other day when he talked about the running game, and he was saying that he doesn't want to draw any judgments off of just 2 runs.
Yeah, talking about the first string guys.
Well, the first string guys were actually in there for 4 runs, and not a single one of them looked good. Dameon Pierce didn't make the right decision quickly enough a couple times, but the blocking was not good. Not just with the offensive line, it was the whole committee. I think there was at least one. There was one play where it was either a wide receiver or Cade Stover that made the wrong decision, and I think it was a wide receiver that left the defensive back unblocked. Fullback whiffed completely and totally, didn't touch a single soul on one play. Linebackers were running free. It was ugly. It was bad blocking, and this is not a team that was running the ball well last year. I would like to see. I feel like, listen, dude, if you guys want to be lead pipe carrying mofos, then get out there and do it. Do it versus the Rams backups.
At what point do we start to point to the coaching of the offensive line?
I'll do it right now. I just like Bobby Slowick hasn't yet proven that he can put together, or Chris Strausser, the offensive
who I'm
line
talking
coach.
about, yeah.
But I would go with Bobby Slowick as the offensive coordinator. He was the passing game coordinator in San Francisco.
Yeah.
He hasn't yet demonstrated, whether it's his fault or not, he hasn't yet demonstrated that he can put together a good rushing attack. So there's a lot of stuff I saw in that game that Joe Mixon wouldn't fix. Joe Mixon would have looked better. There are a couple plays where Joe Mixon, I think, like when they were backed up in the end zone, I think Joe Mixon would have taken a better line than Dameon Pierce did. There was another shotgun run that I think Mixon would have done a better job of, but there's just way too much bad blocking out there for the starters. Like, I don't watch that game and think like, oh yeah, no reason to put him out there in harm's way in a third preseason game. They got to play the Colts. The next game after this is the Colts, and they gotta
Who, according to ESPN's rankings that we're about to dive into right now, Mike Clay is the writer for ESPN. He does this every year. He does the positional rankings 1 through 32 of every position group in the NFL: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, O-line on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, he does interior D-line, edge, off-ball linebackers, corners, and safeties.
Yeah.
So you got 10 positions, and then he ranks the overall roster. The Texans' overall roster ranks 11th, according to Mike Clay, which sounds about right. I feel like they're getting discussed like a team whose roster is more like 5th or 6th, but that's probably because of C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
You know, the quarterback tends to skew the overall impressions of a team and maybe raise the level of what people feel about a team beyond what the actual talent level or production level is. But Indianapolis has the best interior defensive line according to these rankings, to your point. So that's as of right now, that's problematic. Juice Scruggs and Kenyon Green have shown some good things this camp, but it's an overall effort with all 5 guys, add in the fullback, add in everybody else.
Yeah.
These rankings, this is what I wanted to touch on first, because they're fine at quarterback. They're rated 8th at quarterback. Their receiver room is the best in the league. They're going to be able to zip the ball all over the place. Their offensive line is rated 28th on this. Mm-hmm. Their defensive line, interior, is rated 29th on this.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about the defensive line interior. I think part of it, the same way Sheldon Rankins and Malik Collins, even when you look at PFF last year and other things, I feel like people weren't accounting for the scheme. And there's certain things that might look like a defensive tackle isn't doing a good job versus the run in this scheme where it's actually okay because they're gonna get washed out or hit out of their gaps sometimes because they're just jetting upfield. that's when it's on the linebackers to fill in behind them. And I think that Foley Fatukasi and Mario Edwards are going to be just fine in that regard. With the offensive line, part of it is, okay, people are, Kenyon Green hasn't played well historically, but I do think he's a different guy right now. Juice Scruggs is a complete and total unknown right now. And they're going to take their lumps early. And unfortunately, they face, either unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how it works out, they're going to face Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner in that first game, who are both studs.
Yep.
Like big physical dudes that know what the hell they're doing. They're if they didn't play for the Colts, they'd be one of my favorite defensive line duos.
Yeah.
But now I despise them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, so as far as blaming Chris Strausser or Bobby Slowick, there's some things that they do that I can't tell if it's the way the offensive line is being coached and this is their strategy, but there's times where guys aren't all executed. It doesn't look like they're all executing the same scheme. So somebody's off the page, like everybody's outside zone blocking except for one offensive lineman. And there's some things that might be explained with scheme there, or it might be that guys are making mental errors.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. Some of the young guys have really sloppy footwork, and it comes back to bite them. But they're young, so I can't put that on Chris Strausser just yet.
Can you get to a Super Bowl with the 28th best offensive line and 29th best interior defensive line?
I feel like that ranking is unfair, partly because I think they're going to be just fine in pass protection.
Yep.
Like this is an ongoing.
28th felt really low.
This is an ongoing theme with the Texans for whatever reason, in good years and bad, where the pass blocking has been way better than the run blocking. So I'm not overly concerned about the pass protection. I thought the young guys had some really good shots of pass protecting versus good defensive linemen in that game the other night. Blake Fisher's still a work in progress. He had some really good reps. He also got moved to hell on one play by Brian Burns.
He did.
So, no, I think that ranking's too low. I think if you factor in both the run and the pass, they're probably middle of the road right now. Yeah.
Because I think there's other positions, like they're 19th at running back. I think you can get to a Super Bowl having the 19th best running back room. The last 5 Super Bowl winners have all had running back rooms that probably ranked it. Isaiah Pacheco's been winning you Super Bowls lately. You know?
And I think it's a matter of depth more so than anything else.
Yeah.
I think Joe Mixon, people aren't overly impressed by that acquisition by the Texans, but he's much more solid and dependable. Potential for perhaps being in a new scheme with a different quarterback might give him a little bit of an extra boost, but it's who do you have behind him? Like realistically, we got to take our blinders off a little bit here. We as a fan base are getting excited about a guy who's coming off of his second Achilles tendon tear in Cam Akers.
Cam Akers, yeah.
Who wasn't that good after his first Achilles tendon tear.
That's right.
He showed all of those bursts of athleticism that we've seen. He showed them when he was in Minnesota last year. But he still averaged 3.4 yards per carry.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that it does turn out, and man, they can really capture something with him. Mm-hmm. But it's all unproven people or Dameon Pierce, who hasn't been good since really before the last few games that he played in 2022. Because he was getting thumped around. He was putting out some pretty pedestrian performances the last few games before he
towards the end.
Yeah,
in his rookie year. Yeah. Man, there was a video online. I'll get to it later, but there was a video that surfaced of all of Damien's good runs from his rookie year.
Yeah, I've watched them a lot.
It made me sad.
It was the Jaguars one, I think, that you had sent me, wasn't it?
Well, this was a cut-up of like 20 of them.
Yeah.
It made me sad. So anyways, we'll get to that later. In this ranking on ESPN, this positional group ranking, the things that are not surprising, Texans 8th at quarterback. That's about right, I think, for CJ coming off his rookie year. I know a lot of Texan fans would be like, he should be 5th, he should be 4th. It's the whole room, for one thing. Wide receiver, they're first. No surprise there, which sounds weird to say for a Texans team, that they're first among wide receiver rooms. And then the edge rushing room is 4th. Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, top 5. That feels about right. I guess the thing that would be concerning for the Texans, and where if you're buying into these rankings being somewhat accurate, Seth, is that literally every other position group is outside the top 15.
Yeah.
Everything else is hovering around the middle of the road or in the bottom part of the league. Running back, I mentioned 19th. Tight end, 16th. I mentioned the O-line and D-line, 28th and 29th. That's the most concerning thing, although I'm with you. I think they got shortchanged there. Linebackers, 21st. Man, if Christian Harris doesn't get healthy, 21st might be generous right now with that linebacker.
Yeah, I
room.
think there's a few of these that are like, which just happens this time of year. I think some of it's based maybe a little too heavily on last year's team.
Yeah, Mike Clay's not at every training camp.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I was surprised that the linebackers were ranked as low as they were. Part of that, I think, is that if you're looking at the team's base defense, then okay, it's a 4-3. You're looking at the Sam linebacker. Henry To'oTo'o didn't play really well last year, so there's no reason for anybody outside of Houston to think. But I think Henry To'oTo'o has made a lot of progress.
He's had a good camp, yeah.
But I think Christian Harris is another guy that if you look at his season in totality last year, it's not that impressive. People that didn't watch the Texans every week don't realize that Christian Harris was a completely different player in the second half of the season. He doubled his production in a lot of regards. Like actually doubled it in terms of TFLs, total tackles, all of that. He was a much different player in the second half of the season, so I think they're ranked too low there.
If Henry To'oTo'o has to play 50 snaps in the opener against the Colts, how are you feeling about that?
He won't, because they're just not in that. My point about the 4-3 was that they don't play the actual 4-3ry all that much.
I guess let me clarify.
If Christian Harris is hurt,
if Christian Harris is hurt,
then I'm
sorry
nervous.
about that.
Then I'm nervous.
Yeah.
If it's much different,
right.
And we'll see. I'm optimistic that he's an improved player.
Yep.
Athletically, he's just not nearly the same thing as Christian Harris.
Right.
So that's a we'll see. I thought cornerbacks being ranked 18th. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one because again, I think they're looking at Kamari Lassiter as an unproven commodity. I'm pretty bullish on Kamari Lassiter.
Me too.
So I think that right now they should be, the way I expect Kamari Lassiter to play, ranked higher than that. But then there's also the conundrum of, all right, we saw some of those backup cornerbacks like Mike Ford, who led up a huge reception downfield for Daniel Jones in that game. Mike Ford has had a rough training camp. I mean, he's out there playing in the second quarter after the starters go out. So depth at cornerback is not as deep as I would like it to be.
Yeah, I think that if there's positions on this team where I feel like the 53 they take into the season, where the guys are on other teams right now at these positions, I feel like depth at cornerback and depth on the offensive line are two of them for me.
Yeah. Where
I feel like ultimately the 53 that they settle on heading into the Colts game in week 1, that those guys are on somebody else's squad right now.
I think too, Sean, I think where it's valid that there's been a lot of commotion about the Texans based on the improvement last year and then the roster as it's currently constructed is that the positions that matter the most are any position that involves the quarterback on offense or defense. So if you look at the wide receivers, you look at the edge rushers, you look at the quarterback himself, and then you look at the starting cornerbacks, those I feel really, really good about. And beyond that, you gotta have a broad roster of blue-collar dudes that are good players and solid players. So if you go position group by position group, it can kind of give you a misleading thought of just how strong a team actually can be.
Yeah, you're right. Like those positions, the one you're talking about should be weighted.
Those are the positions that are the highest paid positions in the league.
Yeah.
Because they're the most important, they have the biggest impact in the game. In the positions where they have the biggest impact in the game, I feel really good about all those.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why when you got 10 position groups in this exercise that Mike Clay is doing here on ESPN, and 7 of them you're 15th or lower, but your roster is still 11th, I think is reflective of that.
Well, and I would include the offensive tackles in that, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would throw Laramie into that pot you were just talking about.
because they're the other one of the highest paid position groups because it's about protecting the quarterback
Absolutely.
at that spot. So Laramie, in pass protection more so in the run game, is really good. But some of the issues that we saw in the game on last week, the preseason game, I'm optimistic about Blake Fisher. I think he's making really good progress, but as a run blocker, Laramie Tunsil is still much better than him.
Yep.
And just in terms of understanding, sometimes just like the simplest and easiest way. You see with young players, this is universal across sports, so much wasted movement, and they get in their own way sometimes by just hyper-reacting or overreacting to one thing so then they can't react to a counter. That's a little bit where Blake Fisher and some of the young offensive linemen are right now. They're just taking steps that are too big.
Yeah.
The veterans know economy of motion is really helpful, and you're just taking the smallest necessary step, and that's something that Laramie does really well. Even in the run game, even though he's not a road grader, but there are some of these whiffs in mental areas you're not going to see with him.
It's an interesting question just based on the conversation we're having. Seth and I are talking, if you're just getting in your car, ESPN ranked all the positional groups in the NFL 1 through 32, and the Texans are faring really well at a few of them, quarterback, receiver, edge rusher, and then they're kind of middle of the pack or even bottom of the league in the other 7. Overall roster 11th. Random question, text page. Is this team's roster better than, and I'm assuming they just mean talent-wise, better than the 2 Texans teams in 2011 and 2012 that first made the playoffs?
The total roster, I'll say the same thing that Andre Johnson had said. And just I felt like in those really competitive teams and on some of Bill O'Brien's competitive teams, they were very top-heavy. I think this is maybe – I think it's as talented at top-level talent, especially if you include the quarterback position. I think most people would agree. I think Matt Schaub would agree that C.J. Stroud's ceiling is higher than his ceiling was.
Yeah.
So I would say they are more talented at the top end and much deeper throughout. So, yeah, I think on paper right now, as we sit here in August, where everything has been meaningless, I think they've got the potential to be a better overall roster than those teams.
It's funny. They're kind of like a bizarro version in this exercise. If you're rating all the position groups, they're not a perfect flip bizarro version of each other, but like the 2011 Texans, I think Matt Schaub in this exercise is probably like a 12 to 14 or 15 quarterback, whereas CJ's 8th. Running back, they're probably near the top of the league with Arian Foster. Offensive line, that was a top 5 offensive line. They're 28th in this exercise. That was the interior defensive line was depending on how you categorize J.J. Watt. They ran a 3-4. So depending on how you categorize a 3-4 defense in this exercise, are your edge guys really more like the Connor Barwins of the world or Brooks Reed?
Well, right, yeah.
Opposed to JJ?
Well, and JJ for the duration of the season was a rookie that was showing promise but not necessarily doing a whole lot.
In 11,
He kicked it in.
Yeah.
But if you look at, as an edge rusher, Brooks Reed or Connor Barwin versus Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter.
Right.
I think they've got to be like Connor was very good as a versatile 3-4 outside linebacker where good pass rusher could actually be relied upon in coverage way more than most outside linebackers, but he wasn't the menacing pass rusher that Daniil Hunter is. I would take Will Anderson over Brooks Reed. So
yes,
I think
me too.
I think that again when you get to the marquee positions, the 2000, this squad right here is better. And then I do think, just by virtue of maybe special teams play, you can see the depth of the roster. And they've done a good job. Nick's done a good job with that over the last few years of getting a pretty deep roster in terms of having guys that are capable of playing special teams.
Yeah. Let's relive some of the magic from Saturday real quick, because I've got an observation on the Texans and the effect they're having on their opponents here in the preseason. Let's relive the magic of Jalen Petrie getting a pick 6.
Jones fakes the give on 2nd and 8. Pumps, and he's going to be sacked. No, he gets rid of it. Last moment, it's picked off for a touchdown.
There's your guy.
Jalen Petrie to the end zone. Pick 6, short range.
There's your guy. Vandy must have been talking up Petrie before the game.
Yeah.
And then we had this just a series or two later.
Jones in the gun. He's got time, and he airs it out deep down the right side, and Stingley has a pick inside the 5-yard line. Derek Stingley Jr. with the interception. There was no way he was going to be denied. The pass intended for Jalen Hyatt.
That catch, that's still.
It was one of those things where you got to credit Daniel Jones partly for it,
Put it right on the number.
And yet it was still an impressive feat pulling it off.
The hands catch aspect to it, that it was away from Stingley's body and not intended for him.
Daniel Jones was like, I felt like he was maybe he was kind of just fixated on Derek Stingley's hazel eyes or something.
He's always fixated on
throw
something.
Him a pick 6 early in the
he did. First play of the
drive
game.
too. Yeah.
So
it was, it was both a bad pass but also a brilliant interception.
So you and I had talked before the Pittsburgh game. You had brought this up several times about how it's going to be cool to watch the Texans have an impact on one of the more interesting quarterback battles in the NFL, right? Like, And we didn't see Russell Wilson in that game. We only saw Justin Fields for like a quarter and a half. And Fields did a couple good things. Pittsburgh people got all hot and bothered and up and really hyped about some of the completions that he had.
There were
Whatever.
Pittsburgh people that were optimistic about that performance.
Well, just some of the articles you sent me.
Oh, that
like maybe
one,
the writers.
There was one, yeah.
Like
I wonder. I bet Steelers fans.
The smart ones were not, probably.
Yeah.
But this just in, every fan base has dumb fans. It actually may be this quarterback room in New York that the Texans, in the short term at least, have had a bigger impact on in terms of the impressions. This is Emmanuel Acho of FS1 yesterday. I'm not a huge Acho guy, but I loved this analogy about Daniel Jones. And again, this is all on the heels of the Texans making him look like he looked his first couple years in the league this weekend. This is a fantastic analogy, basically calling Daniel Jones a zero.
How can you start Daniel Jones? You are betraying your running back, your tackles, your guards, your receivers, your defensive linemen, your outside backers, your defensive ends, your cornerbacks, your safeties, your inside backers. You are betraying the entire organization when you make Daniel Jones a starter, because all of their work is void by starting Daniel Jones. That's like adding all of the numbers into a calculator and then hitting times 0. You will end up at 0. So it does not matter how much you keep hitting plus Neighbors, plus Thomas, plus Dexter Lawrence, plus Okedeke. It doesn't matter how many times you continue to hit plus, because at the end of the day, you have to hit times Daniel Jones, and that will equal 0.
You know what?
That's really good.
I like that because, you hear sometimes about people being like, well, they're force multipliers. A player that makes everybody else around him, he's a force multiplier.
Yeah.
You can use that same term and say, yeah, he's a force multiplier. You're multiplying by 0.
Right.
Daniel Jones is a force multiplier.
Yes.
What's the factor? 0.
0. The factor. That's the word I couldn't think of. That's the word I couldn't think
text
of.
line, tell me if I was right or not. I can't remember.
I was just going to say integer.
I stopped helping my kid with math about like 4th grade. I was like, I don't remember any of this crap. That was like,
I know.
Once I hit algebra, like y'all do this differently these days.
Dude.
I don't know.